Alrighty, so today we're going to be having a look at actually using standard deviation to compare something. So something that we probably haven't gone through is just a little bit of notes on what is standard deviation. Well, standard deviation is a measure of spread. And we currently have three measures of spread. We have the range, which is just max, take, min. We have the IQR, the interquartile range, which is Q3 minus Q1. And we have both the sample and population standard deviation. And the way that measures of spread are used is measures of spread tell us about consistency. Okay? If you have a high measure of spread, it means that the data is really spread out. That means you've got low consistency. If you have a low measure of spread, that means you have highly consistent or high consistency. Okay? And what does consistency mean? Well, it means if I'm going to try and throw a basketball at a hoop, if I get it in, say, 1 out of every 50, I'm not very consistent because I'm only getting it 1 out of every 50, which is pretty honest. That's about where I'd probably be. Whereas if, say, a professional basketballer were to do it, they might have 45 out of 50 or maybe even higher when they're shooting a hoop. So their consistency is a lot higher than mine. So consistency can tell us not only how well we perform, but also how consistently we perform at the same level. And that's what we're going to be investigating here. So we've got a netball competitor, and so the number of goals Eloise scored in 15 games of a netball competition were recorded, and you can see all of these numbers. They're all double digits. The lowest one, I think, is 22, and the highest one looks to be 48. And so then it says, calculate the mean and standard deviation for the data. Give the values rounded to 2 decimal places if necessary. So let's do part A. So for part A, where we need to work out the mean and we need to find out the 2 standard deviations. The population and the sample. Alrighty, so once again, we've got our calculator open, so let's just go straight into it. So mode to 1 for one variable. We actually don't need the frequency, so I'm actually just going to turn that off. It's good to be able to turn it on and off as you need it. And I'm just going to enter in all the data. Now, I actually made a mistake, and I did actually count up how many things there are, because it says, say, there's 15 games, and I only had 14. So I did just go through and fix that up as well. But really important that you do check your data before you go through and do all of this, because otherwise all of your answers are going to be wrong. I've just typed in 15 numbers, all which are 2 digits. That's 30 digits. If any one of those digits is wrong, all my answers are going to be complete and utter bunk. Not good. We need to make sure that we check before we then move on. Alrighty, so clear the screen, Shift 1, open up a stat menu, 4 for var, and we want 2, 3, and 4. We can't get them all at once, we have to do them step by step. So there's my mean. Population standard deviation. I need that row 1, the fun little symbol. 3.38. Now, the question did ask us, 7.38. Write things down correctly. That's also really good sage advice. Alrighty, Shift 1, 4, and let's get our sample standard deviation. Make sure you click equals. Lots of the time we forget to click equals, and then we think 2 of our values are the same. All rounding up today. Alrighty, so there are my 3 answers for part A. Okay? So then it says, in the following week, Eloise is injured and early in the game and only scores 4 goals. Determine the new mean and standard deviation and comment on any changes. Alrighty, so once again, we're going to be working out the same ones, but we want to work out how they've changed. So to edit the data, what we need to do is to reopen the data menu so that we can go through and actually changed one piece of data. I don't want to have to re-enter it. If I go mode 2 and then start resetting, I'm going to have to enter all of these 15 numbers in and add an extra one. So let's just go stat mode and let's jump into the data. And here we can edit it. It's a great way of checking that you've entered in the right data, but it's also a great way of changing the data. There we go. I've just added a 4 on the 16th week. So let's clear the screen and then do our statistics all over again. So I might just speed through this, but now we've got our new mean. And we are rounding to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to pause it and do a list. Alrighty, so I've now calculated, and we can see that her mean has gone down and her standard deviations have both gone up. So what does this actually tell us? Well, the mean being lower means that, and I hate saying that, the mean being lower means that, but the mean being lower means that she's now scoring, on average, a lower score. So her performance has lowered. And in particular, in terms of her quality, she's scoring less goals. On average, she is scoring fewer goals using the measure of center, which is mean. Alrighty. If I want to now talk about the standard deviations, well, this means that she is now less consistent. So her standard deviation has gone up significantly, which means her consistency has dropped significantly. And it makes sense. When you're a really consistent player like she has been, where lowest score is 22 and her highest score is 48, she's doing really, really well. When we add in an outlier 4, well and truly outside of the data set, then we can see how big it actually affects these things. So imagine these were 2 different players. Player A has this stat and player B has this stat. Well, you want player A, not for one reason, but for 2. On average, she's scoring more goals than this player and more consistent. Lower standard deviation means that she's going to be more consistent. Higher standard deviation means she's going to be less consistent than another player. So she's both lost in terms of her performance and in terms of her consistency. Alrighty, see you in the next one. Goodbye.